Hi, this is Irene Ashu, your series producer for Goodluck Girl. This week, I got to sit down and conduct an interview myself. Thu is one of the most amazing women I know, and I'm glad I got the privilege to interview her. Beyond being smart, she's also an amazing artist. Thu is a California native who grew up in the OC. She graduated from UC Irvine with a degree in pharmaceutical sciences. Thu is currently in pharmacy school at Western University. Thu is passionate about social justice, fashion, and an amazing makeup artist, a former member of Tri Delta, and one of the most influential women from her graduating class. I know Thu will give you guys an eclectic perspective into her life and also offer advice for women that would like to follow in her shoes. Stay tuned for this week's episode of Goodluck Girl, and I am Irene, your host.
Hi, Thu.
Hi, Irene.
I'm excited to interview you today. You are one of the smartest women I know, and definitely a trailblazer in your own right, beyond just being intelligent, graduating from undergrad, pursuing a degree in pharmacy, dispelling beauty standards in your community and Asian communities at large, dating a man of color, and being a proponent for social justice. We're fortunate to have you here, and I would just love to kind of know more about you. So you're originally from California?
Yes, thank you for having me here today and deciding to interview me, of all people. So I was born in California, raised there in Orange County. I've never lived anywhere outside of California, really.
How weird was it to grow up in Orange County? Do you feel like growing up in Orange County kind of shaped who you were as a person, or were you always trying to rebel against typical Orange County norms?
Well, the thing is that people don't realize is Orange County has a very large Vietnamese community.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because when the Vietnam War happened, California took in a lot of Vietnamese refugees, and that's how my parents came to the country. And that's why if you go to Orange County, that little Asian ghetto, Little Saigon, it's one of the largest Vietnamese populations outside of Vietnam.
Side note, Little Saigon has amazing pho, not pho, for you people out there.
Yeah, so we live very close to our culture in Orange County, and I was always surrounded within my culture at home. I think when you're talking about fighting outside of Orange County norms, I didn't really face that until I really went to UCI, because I grew up in a community that wasn't super rich, because a lot of middle class families.
Everyone sees Orange County and they think, oh, you must live in Newport Beach. Yeah. Oh, you drive a Porsche. I really don't think people consider places like Santa Ana and real Santa Ana to be part of Orange County in a lot of ways. Whenever I talk to people from Orange County, I feel like they consider that Orange, Irvine, Newport, Laguna. I never hear kind of the north part being included in their descriptions.
Yeah, because all of the cities you're talking about are mostly rich upper class Asian populations or white people. And it's such a shame, because I live in Santa Ana too, along the cusp of Garden Grove and Santa Ana. So I didn't really get a full exposure of how people interpreted the upper class in Orange County until I went to UCI, because there's so many people that come from Irvine that end up going to UCI. They have this privilege that is unchecked, because I just got back from the East Coast. There's a lot of people there that are wealthy, my boyfriend's family is well off, but there's people there that are aware of their privilege, and they're checked, and they're aware of social injustices in the political climate, where it just seems Orange County is its own bubble of this is being in the sun, having fun times.
It's
all the time.
Because Orange County is a high population of minorities, but also one of the most conservative counties in the entire United States. At home, did you feel deeply connected to your culture, or did you feel like your parents tried to shift more towards an Americanized way of life?
Well, I think when you're talking to a lot of children of immigrants, the thing is you're living in constantly two worlds. While my family was upholding all of these cultural traditions from their homeland, they also had to become westernized to exist and to succeed in this country. So while I grew up and at home, I was very much Vietnamese, very connected to the culture, celebrating the holidays that we have back in Vietnam. I was also spending half of my life and literally half of my day in school, trying to also fit in with the westernized norms, like packing gross sandwiches.
And I feel like, side note, gross sandwiches are definitely a staple of a young immigrant first generation child, because your parents want to give you like this Americanized lunch, but they actually don't know what to pack you, so you end up having something that you half really love but half are kind of embarrassed to eat.
Yeah.
And I feel like first gens, we can relate to that. Because I feel like our lunch is kind of the first time where we strongly feel like, I am other.
Yeah, because you bring your lunch and then everyone's like, oh, this smells weird. Like, all of these white kids that don't even know what spice tastes like are like, oh, like, why does that smell so gross? Like, why are you eating that? That
But
looks gross.
low-key, your food is actually bomb, and
Yeah.
you're just embarrassed, but you also want to enjoy your bomb-ass lunch.
Yeah, so you end up packing, my grandma packed me and my brother these gross, like, bologna and cheese and mayo sandwiches, just every single day. And then it wasn't until high school where I was like, oh my god, I hate this food. I want my real home food that my grandma makes me.
Yeah.
And then you just, like, throw away all of, like, your discussions. Like, who the F cares? And just start packing your own lunch and reconnecting with your culture.
Nice.
So in that aspect, you're constantly living between both worlds, like trying to find your identity as a Vietnamese American, but also understanding, like, how do I identify with the other half of myself that lived in this country? And then it goes into question, oh, am I Vietnamese enough, or am I too American?
Yeah, because it's like you're always kind of living on the line, because as you said, for your parents to be successful in a Western world, you do have to adapt in certain ways and adapt to succeed. And I think first generation kids, that's something our parents definitely taught us. To succeed, there has to be some form of adaptation and some form of connection to the old world and connection to the new world. Being a minority, how was navigating dating in high school? Did you feel like it was always something out of your reach, or did you feel like it was something accessible to you?
Well, I didn't date in high school. I think when you grow up with a tiger mom, like like my mom.
What is a tiger mom for people that don't
Tiger
know?
mom is essentially, it doesn't even have to be anyone that's an Asian mom specifically, but an Asian mom is like a mom that pushes their children into doing all of these insane extracurricular activities for the sake of their future achievement. Granted, I'm getting my doctorate degree in pharmacy. My brother is a lawyer, so she essentially got the Asian dream.
Your mom took the sprinkle and she's like, you guys are gonna do piano.
So let me tell you what my schedule was as a kid. Like, from the time that I can remember, I was always in summer school. I never failed a class in my life.
Wow.
It was just my parents made me get summer school. Every summer we did math and English summer classes. During the school year, I would have math tutoring 3 times a week. I'd have piano classes every Saturday. I'd have Girl Scouts every Sunday and Vietnamese school in the afternoon on Sundays. Friday, I would get art lessons.
Wow.
So that was my schedule.
A full schedule is like an understatement.
Yeah.
But do you feel like the way your mom was kind of shaped your work ethic for the future? Because talking to other first generation kids, sometimes they can't see why you would push to go to school or push to do something that is kind of hard. And I feel like relating to other Americans in that aspect of kind of wanting to work hard for not only you, but your parents. Because I feel like we're constantly in the back of our mind trying to think like, oh no, I also want to be successful for my parents and not just for me. And I'm sure you could relate to that in some aspects.
Yeah, because I think I have the traditional experience of being a second generation child in this institution in America, and my mom really pushed me and brother because there's such a large emphasis in the Asian community as education as a gateway into success. And I mean, I guess to go back to your previous question about dating in a westernized society, because of my schedule, because my mom pushed these type of achievements through education in our face so much, I never went out with my friends. I never really, like, dating wasn't even an option. I think my mom always told me you can date once you have your career.
Yes.
Same thing with my brother. Like, we weren't really allowed to go out, date, socialize. I didn't really start hanging out with my friends up until my senior year of high school. I wasn't allowed to sleep over at my friend's house up until senior year of high school, and I really didn't start getting my own social life up until college.
Very relatable, because a lot of people will be like, what do you mean you never slept over at your friend's house? I'm like, legitimately, my mom said no. Like, up until senior year of high school was the first year I would spend nights away from home. So
yeah.
For undergrad, did you live on campus or off campus?
I lived at home because I wanted to save my parents money, and then my dad was battling Parkinson's disease during that time, so it really made sense. My brother already went to college at that point, and he already moved out to San Diego, so it made more sense for me to stay home and, like, help out. And honestly, I wouldn't change that for anything, because while I didn't get to have the full college experience, whatever the hell that is, it pushed me to become a more social person, because I joined Tri Delta. That's where I met you. That's where I met a lot of my good friends from college. And I think if I lived on campus and did the whole normal dorm life, I wouldn't have pushed myself to be as social as I was to get more involved like that. I would have just been fine with having friends from my immediate vicinity, as opposed to joining a big organization like Tri Delta was.
That's definitely like a uphill journey. Do you feel like your dad having Parkinson's was, I'm not familiar with Parkinson's, but was it full-blown more so when you were in college, or was it something that kind of developed over time, and how did that kind of affect your mental stability and your home stability?
So my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease around when I was 8 years old, pretty young, and it was pretty stabilized up until a point. What Parkinson's disease is, it's a neurodegenerative disease in which your mind can't control, I think, through, basically in a nutshell, you can't really control your movement. So there's a lot of shaking, there's a lot of trembling. With that comes, like, muscle loss and ability to control, to speak, issues with swallowing, and it's a very slow degenerative disease, and most people die very quickly through that, and it's a slow process. But my dad has been taking some medications for many years now, like survived the disease for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he's for longer than that, I don't even really know, but he's like still moving around, which is almost unheard of. He's still walking on his own, which is only heard of at his stage and how old he is. But that really affected my home life. I think just the side effects of medication started becoming an issue in my home life and making it very, like, unstable. But I was still fighting to just get my life together, and still trying to succeed, and still trying to have my own life while still taking care of my family in this.
Do you feel like you've always been there as kind of a support person for her in a lot of ways because of your dad's condition?
Yes and no. My mom and I have an interesting relationship, because I think growing up she wasn't really present, and that was because she was working a lot of overtime, trying to make enough money for our family. So because of that, I don't think we had a very close relationship growing up. And then she was very demanding of, you know, the achievements that she wanted me to achieve, essentially, and, like, trying to mold me in this type of person that was, how do I say, like, ideal in the sense of a ideal Vietnamese woman, and that wasn't me. Like, that's not how I grew up.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we were always at odds with each other. And I think in the wake of my dad's condition, I think we grew a little bit closer, but we also approached it differently. And considering, you know, what role she played in relation to my dad and what role I played, it was very different as well. So we weren't always on the same page. But now that I've moved out of that house and we've grown apart in different ways. I think now we've gotten closer.
Yeah.
Just looking back, I've looked back at the choices my mom had to make, so I'm a bit more understanding.
Yes.
And I think the fact that I'm not living with her anymore, so it's not as much overbearing.
It's so weird
to be around her. So then, you know, I can relate to her in a different way, and I think she relates to me in a different way as we've both gotten older.
I think sometimes, like, people say, like, literally, absence makes a heart grow fonder. I think no matter how much you love someone, sometimes being right up under them might not be the ideal situation for your relationship. Because I know, just comparing with my family, when I moved away, I felt a lot closer to my parents because I kind of got to step back, and it gave me a better understanding of who they were. Just within Vietnamese culture, do you feel at times you're compared to, like, your cousins or other women within your family? Or within your family, is the dynamic different?
Oh, of course. I think that's like what you were raised on. I was like, oh, you know, like my friend's daughter does this, or oh, your cousin is doing this now. Just always comparing against each other, and like whose children are better, like whose children are doing better things than the other one. It's like a constant comparison and a competition to see who's more successful or who has more wealth, etc., etc. And I was compared a lot with my cousins growing up, in terms of beauty, success,
How
education.
do you feel that comparison? Do you feel like it affected your personal and self-worth in ways, or do you feel like you completely cultivated, like, your own values for yourself independently? Because I know for a lot of Asian women growing up, they see family members getting eyelid surgeries or seeking different beauty treatments to move themselves more to a Western standard of beauty. Do you think any of that, in combination with your family's dynamics, affected your self-worth in any ways?
Oh, of course. I mean, growing up, like my mom specifically told me, like, oh, I think we need to give you a nose job because your nose is too flat, or like potentially get eyelid surgery because every female in my family has eyelid surgery.
Yeah.
Like, I literally thought that I was adopted. So I was like, why don't my eyelids look like any of you guys? And as I realized, they all got eyelid surgery. But, you know, when you're growing up in that environment where you're constantly being compared and, like, criticized for things that you're not, you have a self-esteem issue. And growing up, I cared so much about what everyone else thought because my mom cared about what everyone else thought. And just the culture, basically growing up, everyone cared what everyone thought about. And it wasn't until I really took a step back and it had drained me so mentally in high school that I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop caring. Like, I'm going to stop living under my mom's microscope and what she wants me to be and start fighting for myself and doing what I want to do and what I want to achieve in my way. And you know, it's funny that you talk about beauty standards because I was watching a YouTube video the other day of all of these Asian women putting tape on their eyes to make it seem like they had a double eyelid and getting like the molding makeup so that they can build their nose higher. And it just makes me so sad because growing up, there wasn't representation for Asian women to be considered beautiful. And then just this influx of surgical procedures to make their nose higher, to make their eyelids bigger. And that's just so disturbing.
It really is, because that kind of thing, even as a teacher, I see it from like a very young age for just the way I see my students like look at themselves, because their moms will get nose jobs, get their eyelids done. And I had one of my students say to me, she goes, "I'm not beautiful yet." And those kind of things, it's like you realize how young it starts, and it takes so much time to kind of back up and erase everything. Is there anything you do in your personal life, whether it's like activism online or just face-to-face activism with friends and different Asian women, to kind of dispel these beauty standards?
I think like when you just talk about it, like I haven't been able to talk about it with like a lot of my Asian friends, but just the idea that like you can't be beautiful unless you have a double eyelid, it's so ridiculous to me. And that was something I believed too growing up, because you see all of these people doing makeup on YouTube and all of their models have double eyelids, and even just walking around and having other people do your makeup when they don't know how to do your makeup.
Yeah.
Like the reason why I went into makeup and I've gotten so good at it for myself is because whenever I went to makeup counters at Dior or MAC and they would try to do my makeup, it looked hideous.
And by the way, guys, her eyeliner is perfect.
And it was because like they always put, like, the way you're supposed to do eyeshadow makeup is like you put the darker color into the crease, and then when your eyes open into someone who has double eyelids, is that it'll disappear and it'll create this very nice framing effect on your eye, makes your eye look bigger. But of someone who doesn't have a double eyelid, like your eyelid doesn't disappear when you open it. So just that type of style, it doesn't work for women like me that have monolids.
I can't imagine like Asian women in like the 90s when there used to be just every girl has done it, where you would put one shade of eyeshadow across your entire eyelid. Let's never go back to that time, and let's keep blending, ladies.
Yes, that makes me so upset, because now I see, and I still see, there's not a lot of makeup artists that can do monolid makeup, and I see it now that there's an influx of representation in the Asian community. I'll see Asian actresses are on the up and coming, getting their makeup done in magazine shoots, and their makeup sucks. Like, I look at it and I'm like, oh my god, if I do your makeup, I can make it look so much better, because they don't know how to do it.
Exactly. And it's definitely a trade people have to learn, because working in entertainment myself, there's people that don't know how to do dark skin, there's people that don't know how to do thick hair. I think society will really grow when we start educating just beyond doing looks on Eurocentric people. It's like they're not the only look anymore. They don't dominate Hollywood anymore. Do you feel like you'd ever make a platform one day? Because I see a lot of Asian beauty influencers, but not many people that do tutorials on various platforms, and platforms that are accessible for kids too.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of my students could benefit from having a how to do this guide, or even community classes, because so much is online. I think a community class could really bring a lot of people together and really bridge gaps. Because I think you're phenomenal and beautiful and definitely aspirational for a lot of girls.
Yeah. I thought about doing my own makeup channel. It's just like I don't have the resources to do it, and like I'm in the process of getting my doctorate degree, so I don't really have time to set it up and set aside a time where I can just do a makeup tutorial. But I honestly feel like if you change the narrative of how Asian women perceive themselves, especially at a young age, that like, hey, like I could look this beautiful with my natural assets, I think it could do wonders. Because I think that's the real problem, is that all of these women just see Eurocentric features being praised and looking beautiful on those magazine covers, and not seeing Asian women the same light on these platforms. And that's why they feel like they need to change themselves to look more European or look more white in order to do that. Which is unfortunate, because if there was someone to show them that, you know, your monolids are awesome and you can do so much with it and your features are beautiful the way they are, your eyes are beautiful the way they are, and in a non-fetishizing manner.
As far as the medical field, did you ever second guess what you wanted to do? Because I know there's a lot of people out there where when you first start your undergrad, you feel like you're set on one track, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm not sure if I really wanted to do that. Has this always been something like, this is the way two's going and I'm not deviating from this path?
Definitely not. I think with how hard undergrad was, especially for science majors and especially at UCI, it was so competitive. I wasn't failing some of these classes, but I wasn't doing as well as I thought I should have with the amount of effort I was doing it. And it was during OChem, which is the behemoth of all the classes that divides people. Like, whether if you fail OChem, like you are not going to be a doctor. That's basically what UCI said. Like, that's the one class that made people change their life, because they're like, oh, I can't do this.
OChem got people like, should I just open up a Starbucks?
Yeah, exactly. No, literally, like, half of my friends
become a business
half
major?
of my friends that were bio majors at UCI like dropped out because they failed OChem, and they couldn't do it, and it just wasn't the right path. Because everyone comes in thinking like, oh, I should be a doctor, I should do this because it's a really good career, you'll make a lot of money, but then people don't realize the amount of work you really have to put into it. And I tell everyone that comes into or wants to become a doctor in the pharmacy field, or becoming a medical doctor, really, really think about it, because yes, it's ideally a great career to have, but you have to understand what you're sacrificing. That means being...
And I feel like you have to have your heart in it.
You do.
Because a lot of people, yes, there's like monetary benefits, but if your heart isn't really in it, that's such a hard existence to push through. And what a lot of people don't talk about really is kind of like the anxiety and like depression and stress you could go through with doing a program like you're doing. Do you yourself personally go through things like that? And do you see that within like your classmates and coworkers?
Oh yeah, like it was like during undergrad, I think when I wasn't doing as well as I thought I should, I literally thought about changing to be a humanities major, because I was good at it. I was good at creative writing. I was good at writing these reports and analyzing historical narratives and writing these reports. And then my cousin was like, stop it, you're not changing your major to humanities major. You're going to stick to pharmacy because this is what you want to do, and this is not just for you, this is for your dad too. So just, not everyone that tries for an A gets an A. That's just the way life is. You just got to push through. And yeah, like going into pharmacy school, you don't realize, first of all, you're in debt for like a good $500,000 by the time you graduate. Like I think that's probably the average for someone that does any sort of medical degree and residency thereafter. But you're studying every single day. Like you're in classes all day long. You're studying, you're memorizing a ridiculous amount of information. You're getting tested on it. And it's just high anxiety, high stress, like constantly. And you stop interacting with your friends really, because you don't have time to do it. You don't really have a social life. The only people you interact with is like your professors and your classmates. And that's sometimes what you have to come down to. And then especially if you're going into it and all your friends have graduated and working a basic 9-to-5 job, and they're living like their best life, like traveling, like doing whatever on the weekends, having their best life, and you're working, you're studying all day, you're catching up on the weekends with your studies, or if you have to like put up with a part-time job, you're giving up all of that in your early 20s. And that's what people forget, that you don't really start your life as a healthcare professional until you graduate, you pass your board exams, you do your residency, and then you start making a little bit of money, but then you have to pay half of it off. So really, your life doesn't begin until like you're like 40 years old.
Giant loop. With all that you just said, I can't imagine how you balance school, maintaining a job, and your dating life. How do you make time to have a boyfriend and really give your relationship energy?
What really helps is that Byron, my boyfriend, we I guess I wouldn't say a long distance, but he lives in LA and I live in the Inland Empire. I live in Chino Hills. So we really only got to see each other on the weekends when we first started going out. And I was still in my second or third year of pharmacy school. So, we would text and call each other every day, and on the weekends I'd come to see him. But we always had our own separate lives to do whatever we needed to do. So that was really nice to not always be in constant interaction with each other and just be able to breathe and have our own lives, develop our own creative pursuits. And then on top of that, he's like a grown man that understands that I
have a life. Ladies, take notes. That is the kind of man that you need, or just partner in general. It's like amazing to be with someone
that understands that you also have a life and they're supportive of your goals, your ambitions. Delving in a little deeper to dating, a lot of women say they've been dating since like middle school, but hearing your experience, it sounds like you started dating when you were out of your undergrad in serious relationships. What is it like starting serious relationships later in life versus earlier in life? Do you wish you got more experience in the beginning, or do you feel like it's kind of nice to blossom into dating when you're blossoming yourself in a lot of ways?
I think it was better for me to begin to blossom, like you said, into dating when I was really growing and blossoming out of my own shell from my parents and from my childhood environment. That was better because I had strong pursuits to do other things. And looking back, a lot of my friends that started dating in high school and college, they got wrapped up in a lot of drama.
I was going to say, for first-gen kids, it's like our experience of dating is always a little bit later. And I think you develop yourself a lot more, and your common sense and your rationality is way different than, let's say, you're dating when you're a 16-year-old. At 16, I was like, I want to eat chicken nuggets and watch TV, let alone trying to emotionally navigate a man. First of all, is like out there.
But that's not to say that we didn't have our own dating mistakes, like starting out. Like you start, taking every type of male attention as a positive attention. And that's a mistake that every woman or every person goes through when they first start dating, is that you're confusing any sort of attention and validation with like emotional
gratification.
Affirmation. Yeah. And I think it took me a while to just like date and meeting these men that just weren't like able to give me what I want, like emotional support, and just being able to be like a stable place for me. And I think for me too, I also had to take a step back and realize, like, why am I giving so much of myself to these people that are only giving me attention when it's convenient for them? Like, why is it that I need their attention and their validation? And I think it was a lot to do with, I didn't get a lot of emotional support from my family growing up, and I think it was me trying to find that void in other places. And it just took me a while to realize that this is what I was doing, dating all these men that just weren't right for me and trying to make it work when like the signs were so obvious that it just wasn't right. And I just took a step back from dating, and coincidentally, I went a year without dating, just focusing on my studies, focusing on myself. And then I met Byron randomly at a bar that I wasn't even planning to go out to. And we just met, saw each other, and then we just started dating and just getting to know each other.
Hey, I feel like when you're least expecting to meet someone, that's oftentimes when they roll in. Delving a little deeper into dating, I know you previously identified as bi. Do you still feel like you fall on that spectrum, or do you feel like you gravitate towards men more?
I think the thing is with like defining your sexuality is like everything is just all on a spectrum. And I feel like I still am attracted to women, but I've just never been with a woman. But I don't think that just invalidates the fact that I feel that way.
Because I think sometimes generally, like I feel that way in a lot of aspects too. I think the label is where it gets kind of, I always wonder, why do we have to put like a label on just attraction in general? Because sometimes for me, just saying like I'm bi, I'm always like, am I, or do I just kind of like what I see more so?
Yeah, it's confusing. I've never been with the women, just not because I've never had the opportunity, but I just don't have people that approach me in that aspect. And I've mostly dated men because those were the people that approached me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Sexual identity is such a gray area, and it's just, I also feel like it's unnecessary to even put a label on it. It's like you just fall in love with whoever you fall in love.
Yeah.
And even you hear stories about women or men that have exclusively dated one gender, one identity their entire life, and then all of a sudden they meet this person that they love, and then it's not what they expected.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, now their labels are all mixed up, and like, what am I doing? Like, you don't need to define it. It's just you fall in love with whoever the fuck you fall in love with.
It's literally just life. If you could give dating advice to the younger two, what would you tell her in this space where you're clearly comfortable in your dating life and clearly with someone who feels just as strongly as you feel for them? What would you say to single two who used to be with me on the prowl going to bars?
I would tell her to just stop idolizing this idea of what your relationship should be or what your dating life should be, and not taking every male attention as some sign of self-validation.
Nice. Two. So you said you got a lot more into social justice when you were studying humanities in college, or was it before then?
I think I really only understood it until I started taking college classes, like a racial and social class in college as an elective, or I guess, no, one of like the requirements to get your general education requirements out of the way. And it really opened my eyes to how everything was associated with race. Not in terms of just color of your skin, but these systems of oppression that have been instilled for generations, that has now affected future generations and minorities.
I feel like sometimes as an Asian American, sometimes taking strong stances on social justice is frowned upon within your community when you're oftentimes on the other side, kind of challenging right-wing ideology. Because I feel like with assimilation in a lot of Asian culture, I see people trying to assimilate by leaning towards right-wing policies and conservatism because it falls into the bubble of like being Americanized. Do you oftentimes feel like you're on the outside when it comes to like interacting with friends and family about politics?
I think now you've seen a lot of Asian American activists, at least in the younger generation, fighting against what their parents were fighting against, and that westernized conservative ideology. Because we grew up with this idea of like, oh, we're part of like the Caucasian group, we're the model minority, but yet why is there a ceiling on our success when we're siding with the white people? And now that the generations are growing, the younger generation is growing up and starting to fight back, they're starting to understand their place in their culture and understanding like a more liberal ideology. And some people don't, some of the younger generations don't, because they grew up in also an environment benefiting from anti-blackness, and they don't understand race in the same aspect of their other fellow minorities.
And I'm sure you've dealt with racism and microaggressions in a handful of ways, being an Asian woman, and dating is like a bubble in its own where people are constantly fetishizing you, constantly approaching you in manners where they wouldn't approach anyone else. Because I've been with you multiple times where someone has approached us and said, I speak Chinese, and we both look at them like, none of us do, so great. Like,
the number one microaggression I always get is like, oh, what are you? And that, I feel like that's only a question that Asian women get so many times, and a lot of people don't understand why it's problematic. Well, it's because people have, I feel like people have some sort of fetish of trying to identify what right Asian you are. And I've been told recently, or asked that question, because the man asking specifically wanted to know like why my complexion was so pretty and why it was like so nice, because he thought, and he assumed it was because he thought I was Korean or like Japanese. as opposed to
that's like an awful racist assumption. Like,
it really
awful.
was. It really was, because when you break that down, it's like not only is he asking me this question as a way to, for some reason, get satisfaction that like, oh, I can identify which Asian you are, but also comparing me as beautiful because I may be of a lighter, more acceptable, more prettier idea of an Asian woman being Korean and Japanese are held on a higher beauty hierarchy than I get some of the darker Asians like Vietnamese or Filipino or Chinese, where they're not seen as beautiful.
And I'm sure this combined with also you are dating a Black man, do you feel stigma from your community, and do you sometimes feel stigma from his community? Because oftentimes you don't talk about, yes, while someone's still a minority, you could still kind of feel like other within their community. And I'm sure Byron sometimes feels like other within your community. Yeah. How do you both navigate interracial dating?
Well, I mean, when I first told my parents that I was dating someone who was Black, like, they did not take it well because they are also benefiting from anti-Blackness and this whole myth that Black and brown men are predators and they're unsafe and they're not successful and they don't treat you well, as opposed to white men, which is a completely false mythology. If you just look at like the research and just how many horrific things that have been done by white men in the past. I just try to tell my parents as little as possible.
Yeah.
Just to keep my own privacy and to keep our relationship just between ourselves. But I think that as I've talked with my parents and my mom, like they all know that whatever I want to do, I'm going to do regardless of their approval. And I think I've been able to do that and just declare it as easily because I haven't had a close relationship with my family growing up. And I just know that my happiness is above like what their sense of approval or what everyone else thinks.
And whatever gives them peace. Because as much as we want to appease our parents and as much as we want to make them happy, at the end of the day, it's really the life you live.
Yeah.
And happiness will really just come from honoring the desires that you have 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you feel comfortable within Byron's community?
I think so, but I also think that I understand that there's also a question of why Black men want to date outside of their community and seem to prefer women of other races as opposed to Black women. And I understand my role in interracial dating. And I've thought about it, you know, if a Black woman came to me and said, you know, it's unfair or it's problematic that there's so many Black men that are dating outside of their race and fetishizing other women of color as opposed to their own.
Because I think it could be cross-cultural too, because even Vietnamese men, I see a lot of them preferring white women or lighter Asian women. So I think beyond just, I think at large, it's an interesting discussion that men of color and women of color of all races could have. Like, I often see men of color preferring other, whether it's Mexican, whether it's Black, whether it's Chinese, Japanese. It's oftentimes they prefer something that's not like themselves.
And if someone were to approach me that way, I'd be like, you know what? That's completely valid. You're right. My role in this type of relationship is that, yes, historically, men of color have always preferred women of lighter skin, women of a certain, I think, I wouldn't say racial identity, but like the stigma behind their color or the color of their skin is a definite factor in what some men will choose in their future partner. But I think that as long as you are in the relationship for the right reasons, regardless of what your race is, and you understand your role in the bigger narrative of what interracial dating is and the impact of that between other communities, I think then that's okay.
Your view and the way you kind of understand the world is so impressive. I say this because not a lot of people in your field take time to really delve into humanities, delve into social justice. Sometimes I feel like within the sciences, the selective way of learning often affects the way people perceive the world. I don't see a lot of science majors really going out of their way to kind of learn about something beyond their bubble. I really feel like you stand out because you are other, and it's like such a privilege to interview you. What I want to know is what's next for Thu beyond becoming a future doctor, working in an amazing career field, influencing people with the way you do makeup, your style, and how you carry yourself in the world. What would you say is kind of next for you?
I don't know, to be honest. I think the possibilities are pretty endless. I could do a lot of things creatively and seek that route, or I can just continue with like in my career and focus on that. Right now I'm just like living in the moment of what I want to do in my future career within the next 2 or 3 years, where I want to live. That's what I'm focusing on right now.
And if you could kind of give a word to our viewers, what would you say to inspire anybody that's watching, anyone that's feeling doubt within themselves and doubt within their path? What advice can you give to our viewers?
I think it sounds so cheesy, but you just honestly have to believe in your journey. Because looking back, I think about all the times I doubted myself and about like my relationships and what I could have the potential to do, and where I almost just fell off of what I wanted to do. You just really have to trust the process of who you're going to meet, where you're going to end up with, because looking back, it's just, hindsight is 20/20. Now everything seems to match up like a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to trust the process and keep going for what you want to do, even when it gets really hard, and even if you have to make certain compromises. You just have to keep pushing for it, because if that's what you want to do at the end of the day, then you should do it. There's no other reason.
I love that, because it's just so simple, but it's truly organically how the world works. I want to thank you for allowing me to interview you today. You can follow Thu on Instagram. Her handle is...
Well, first of all, my Instagram's private.
Her Instagram's private. So if she accepts your request, you can follow her.
I don't even know my Instagram handle, to be honest.
I will edit this video and her Instagram handle will appear right here. Thank you for allowing us and bringing us into your home and letting us get to know you. And thank you for influencing the world, women alike, and just people in general. Thank you, too.
Thank you.